I've spent my life tracking things that don't want to be found. Missing persons, cold cases, buried secrets. But there is one file in my cabinet that keeps growing. It's not a crime scene. It's something else. Case file number 001, the Yowie. For years I dismissed it as a campfire story, a myth to scare tourists. But then I started digging into the official archives, and what I found terrified me. Australia, a continent of extremes, from the red dust of the central deserts to the impenetrable green canopy of the Blue Mountains. It is a land of ancient beauty, but also a land of silence, a silence so deep it feels heavy. Locals say that if you stand still long enough in the bush, the silence starts to watch you back. Before we look at the history, consider the environment itself. The Australian bush is a master of camouflage. The grey bark of the gum trees looks like skin. The dark knots look like eyes. A feeling of being disoriented, of being spun around, and then the sudden snapping of a branch behind you. You turn around, nothing, just the swaying grass. But the feeling remains, the primal instinct that screams, run. Every year, thousands of people venture into the Australian wilderness. Most return with photos and memories, but some bring back something else. Stories, nightmares, tales of a massive shadow moving parallel to their tracks. The sound of heavy footsteps, crushing branches, followed by a smell, a pungent, rotting stench that lingers in the air. We tell ourselves monsters aren't real, that they belong in movies or children's books. But ask the farmers in Queensland, ask the campers in New South Wales who lock their doors at night. They don't talk about myths, they talk about the Yowie. And tonight, we are opening the files that attempt to prove we are not alone in the dark. To understand the Yowie, we must go back. Before the highways, before the cities. The National Library of Australia preserves newspapers dating back to the 19th century. And inside these fragile yellowed pages lies a pattern. In 1842, early European settlers weren't writing about kangaroos or koalas with fear. They were writing letters home about the hairy man. One report from the Australian Town and Country Journal, published in October 1876, describes a terrifying encounter. A group of men near the Shoalhaven River claimed they were stalked by a creature, quote, 7 feet high, covered in hair, with arms that reached past its knees. This wasn't a fleeting shadow. They described its face, flat, ape-like, with eyes that burned red in the firelight, but the settlers were new to this land. The original custodians, the Aboriginal people, had known about these entities for tens of thousands of years. In their Dreamtime stories, there are warnings about the Dooliga or the Yahoo. These weren't just animals to be hunted. They were spiritual beings, protectors of the forest. Beings that demanded respect and punished those who trespassed too deep into sacred grounds. Critics might argue that these historical accounts are just folklore, or hallucinations of exhausted explorers suffering from dehydration. But legends don't leave footprints, and folklore doesn't chase cars down a highway. As Australia moved into the modern era, the sightings didn't stop. In fact, they became more frequent. Cameras became common, communication became instant, and the monster stepped out of the shadows. 1979, the sleepy rural town of Kilcoy in Queensland. A place where everyone knows everyone. It was supposed to be a normal school day. But for a group of students at Kilcoy State School, innocence was about to collide with terror. They reported seeing a creature lurking near the creek bed behind the school grounds. Not a kangaroo, not a wild dog. A massive ape-like figure, covered in dark matted hair, standing upright like a man. was the smell. Before the creature appeared, a thick, sulphurous stench filled the air, like rotting meat mixed with wet dog. It triggered a primal gag reflex. Some researchers believe this isn't just hygiene. It's a biological weapon, a defense mechanism similar to a skunk, designed to paralyze prey with sheer nausea. The children described its eyes, penetrating, intelligent. This wasn't a fleeting glimpse. It led to mass hysteria. Parents were terrified. Teachers were baffled. This event triggered what the media called Yowie mania. The local newspaper, the Courier Mail, splashed the story across the front page.
It's exactly as you described. We have the evidence to back it up, and the public needs to know the truth.
The Yowie capital of Australia. The town eventually embraced the legend, building a wooden statue that stands in Yowie Park to this day. A tourist attraction. For the witnesses who stood near that creek in 1979, the memory isn't a souvenir, it's a trauma. And Kilcoy is just one pin on a very crowded map, from the dense Pilliga scrub in New South Wales to the misty peaks of the Gold Coast hinterland. The reports share chillingly consistent details, but footprints can be faked, photographs can be blurred. Audio is much harder to forge. In the deep valleys of the Blue Mountains, strange recordings have been captured. Low-frequency howls that don't match any known Australian animal. Not a dingo, not a koala. Sound engineers confirm these vocalizations require a massive chest cavity, far larger than a human's, to produce such deep resonance. Enter Rex Gilroy, often called the father of Australian cryptozoology. For decades, Gilroy dedicated his life to proving the Yowie is flesh and blood. He didn't just collect stories, he collected physical evidence. Plaster casts of footprints, some measuring over 50 centimetres in length. Footprints that show a distinct anatomy, wider than a human's, with toes that grip the earth with immense power. Skeptics claimed they were fakes, hoaxes made with wooden cutouts. But expert analysis of the stride length suggests otherwise. The distance between the steps indicates a creature with a stride far longer and heavier than any human could simulate without heavy machinery. Whatever walked through that mud weighed over 300 kilograms, and it was walking alone. But in the cold light of day, science demands more than just stories and grainy footprints. It demands biological facts. Zoologists from the Australian Museum propose a theory that is grounded in reality, but tragic in nature. They point to the common wombat. Normally a round, furry, four-legged marsupial, hardly a monster. But nature can be cruel. When a wombat is infected with severe sarcoptic mange, it loses all its fur. Its skin turns grey, thick and scabby. It becomes emaciated, revealing a skeletal frame. In its suffering, the animal may stand on its hind legs to scratch, or forage for food in a desperate state. Imagine seeing that, caught in your headlights on a lonely bush road at 2 a.m. A hairless, grey, humanoid figure moving awkwardly in the shadows. Panic fills in the blanks, and a sick animal becomes a beast. Psychologists have another name for this: pareidolia. The human brain is a survival machine. It is hardwired to detect threats. In the chaotic patterns of the Australian bush, the twisted branches, the termite mounds, the shifting shadows, our brain tries to find a face. It is better to mistake a tree stump for a monster and run than to mistake a monster for a tree stump and die. This evolutionary instinct might explain why sightings are so consistent. We are programmed to see the Yowie, and yet, theories cannot explain everything. They cannot explain the footprints found in remote peaks where no wombat lives. They cannot explain the terrifying howls that vibrate through the chest. or the accounts from Aboriginal elders that predate modern psychology by thousands of years. Perhaps science is right. Or perhaps we are just trying to rationalise what we fear. The Australian Outback keeps its secrets well. It is vast, ancient, and largely unexplored. Whether the Yowie is a flesh and blood creature or a ghost of our own imagination, one thing is certain. When you're out there, alone in the deep bush, and a twig snaps behind you, science won't comfort you. You will run. I'm the silent investigator. What do you think is watching us? Tell me below. So, after analysing 200 years of data, what is my verdict? Is there a flesh and blood ape running around the bush? I don't think so. It's biologically impossible to hide a population of giants in 2024. But I don't believe the witnesses are lying either. My theory? I believe the Yowie is real, but not physical. Look at the Aboriginal accounts. They call it a spirit. I believe the Australian Outback emits a specific infrasound, a frequency that triggers deep primal hallucinations. The Yowie isn't in the trees, it's in our heads. It is the physical manifestation of our fear of the wild, but that is just my theory. The file remains open. If you have seen something, tell me in the comments. I read everything. This is the Silent Investigator, signing off.